Hello guys, welcome to the first episode of System Design 100, and today we'll be covering how you can design the architecture of a very basic static website that you want to host. So static website could be something that doesn't have any functionality. For example, it's not taking any input output, and it does not have any kind of a dependency on a database that it is pulling data from. It's just a static website that contains some information in form of HTML, JavaScript, and CSS for its decoration. So in that case, we'll have a very basic architecture, and I'm gonna explain you how what kind of architecture can support that kind of website. Okay, so for example, not just website, but that kind of application. A website is a term that we generally use for web applications only, but we'll use application that will include both mobile applications and web applications. Okay, so for example, generally in general terms, generally we have two kind of users for our application, right? For almost all application, you'll see we have mostly two kind of users. One are the users which visit your website from a web browser, that is from a PC. It can be from mobile also, but generally we take it as PC. And second are the users who visit your website from a mobile application. Okay, so first let us take example of the users who visit your website from a browser. Okay, so in case of browser, if you know, right, we when we want to visit some website, we type a web address or a URL for the website, like www.google.com. But generally, generally for the servers that hold the information, or that generally host the website, their address is not in that, not in a form of a name or a URL. There is something called an IP address for each server. It doesn't matter like how many servers there are around the world. Each and every server that is serving that is public facing and serving something has a public IP address through which we can contact the server. Okay, now the IP address is a topic in itself, and how it is named and why it is in this form. We can discuss this in some other video, but for now you can assume that it is a unique address for each and every server around the world. For example, Google hosts its website in a server like this, and this server has an address called 192.168.1.1. What these numbers mean, you don't have to worry about it. We'll cover it in some other video. But just imagine this is a unique address for this server. Now, as a user from your laptop, you want to reach this server, as you want to use the Google any of the Google's web pages, for example, search or anything. But general public that people use, who are not technical, they cannot remember this server, right? It's not only there is only this server. For example, for Google search, it will be this address. From some other Google service, YouTube, there will be some other address. I'm really sorry. Apologies for that. So all the servers for different services will have a different IP address, and it will be very difficult for us to remember each and every IP address, right? So generally for humans like us, it's easy for us to remember names rather than numbers. So now to support that, we have some kind of services called DNS. I'll come here. So DNS is called domain name services. Now, DNS is a separate service from the web from the services that host your website. It's a separate service. It can be same service. For example, cloud platforms like Azure and AWS has their own DNS services also that they provide for the applications that reside in that cloud. But generally, there are different services. So what basically DNS service do is that it resolves the name against an IP address for the website that you're trying to reach, right? For example, you do not know that this website, google.com, has this IP address. How will you know that, right? You don't have to remember it. We use something called DNS. So DNS is nothing like, it's a server nearby you, nearby your location, and it will contain a data structure, something kind of a hash table. So for example, this is a DNS server nearby in your region. Okay, So it will contain some kind of hash table. Let's add more rows. Okay. So the name of the website against the IP address. Okay, this is the very basic explanation I'm doing. It's a little complex than that. There are multiple records, A records, C records, but yeah, this is a simple form I'm trying to explain you. So for example, it will host google.com as key, and its value will be the value of the server address 192.168.1.1. Okay. Similarly, for it might also have for amazon.com if Amazon is using. Generally, they have their own service, but yeah, I'm just taking example 192.168.1.2. It will lead you to the Amazon server. So when you as a user will want to reach to this server, Google server, what you want because you want to open their website. So what you will type in your browser www.google.com. Now what that will do, that will redirect your service to your DNS. Now in the DNS there will be a DNS lookup. They will check for the value, the key that you entered www.google.com, which IP address value is there, and they will check that yeah, this is google.com and the IP address is this for that IP. Yeah, IP address is this. They will return this IP address value to you, to your browser, and then using that IP address value, your browser can directly connect to this service, right? To this google.com server, right? So then you will be served. In return, you will get HTML, JavaScript, and your CSS values, because this is a static website, right? So generally, most people don't even know this, right? When you type an address, what happens internally is that your browser sends a request to the server, and then the server returns back with these files to your browser. Now that is why you are able to see those the website in your browser itself, because it is pulling the HTML, JavaScript, and CSS from the web browser to your PC, your browser. Okay, that is why you get this in return. So that is how generally you visit a static website and you interact with the static website. This is the way. Now, when you are a mobile application user, you're not a web application user. Okay, you are using it through an app. So, for example, you use Amazon, right? And Amazon you can visit both through a mobile application and through a website. And for website you have to type www.amazon.com. Similarly, how I explained you, it's not a static website. There is other things as well here, but it's for some later video. But this is just a basic explanation I'm trying to give you. Okay, from a mobile application, it's a little different. Internally, everything is happening the same way, a little bit of same way, but it's a little different in terms of how request goes out and request comes back. So in what was happening in web browser, right? We were using something called a web browser, in which we used to type it, this address used to go to DNS, and then we used to get this in return. So instead of typing the address manually in a web browser, in mobile application everything happens in its own, and internally mobile applications use something called an API. The address of an API is very similar in terms of web URL. It's, for example, it might be something called api.google.com/search if you're trying to search. Okay, but what an API returns is different from what an web URL returns for a web browser. So whenever you trying to hit a server from a web browser, it returns HTML, JavaScript, and CSS because it is meant for a web browser. Web browser can understand this and resolve it in the form of a UI that it can show you. But for mobile application, it's not like that. Mobile application are a little different. They are already structured, and it's a lot of frames and structures is already present in your mobile application when you download it. It just needs the data to sort it out in the UI and show it to you. So how it gets that data in form of a JSON. Now JSON is a language. It is a structured language in which consists of key value pairs, something like name. You can search about it. What is JSON, how it stores data. Okay, so what happens in that case? Mobile application internally hits an API. So this might be the API, and it will now API is also in terms of your URL, right? So it will store a similar kind of structure how DNS works for web browsers. Okay, so an API will also generally it might have a different table. For example, in the same DNS, it might have a different table for APIs. and it will be like API and IP and something like api.google.com IP address 192.168.1.1. Okay, so in API, mobile application will hit the DNS server first, as you know, as the API values are stored in here. It will check that it's an API. It will go to the API table. It will look for the API. Now the data for this API is stored in this server. Again, it might be the same server, different server. We're assuming it's the same server. So now the request it will return the IP to the mobile application, where IP of the server where the data is stored. Now the mobile application will hit this server because it has the IP now. This server will not return HTML, JavaScript and CSS. It will return a JSON file or a JSON structure that the mobile application will internally resolve by itself, and it will show you the EUI. Now this is a very basic structure that I've talked about. This is for a static website or a static application that does not have any functionality. Oh, I'm sorry guys, I think the electricity went out. Oh, sorry about that. So I think we are already done. Yeah, okay. So I think we are already done. So this is the basic structure that I want to talk about. This is the very basic single tier web application static that does not have anything, and this is how it generally works. I have explained DNS and everything in very detail because this is the first video. But from the next episodes, I'll be doing it in very short. Okay, I'll just take note that this is DNS. This will resolve IP address, so that we can learn about different components also. Okay. So this is the very basic explanation of how static websites work and how we can design the system for that. Thank you very much. This was episode 1. Goodbye.